Greetings all, Ferrariman 601 here. Yesterday, the 29th of September 2016, my home state, the state of New Jersey, was shaken by a tragedy. What we know at this time is that a commuter train heading into Hoboken Rail Terminal from the Pascak Valley Line, train number 1614 out of Spring Valley, New York, impacted buffers at the end of the track within the platform area of the Hoboken Rail Terminal, thus causing a derailment, causing at least a number of the four coaches on the train to impact the platform, the walls, and potentially roof of the station. And this has led to, at this time, one fatality and approximately 114 other injuries, two of which are still being described at this time as critical, therefore requiring extended hospital care. The single fatality at this time appears to have been of a woman standing on the station platform. Whether she was impacted by a section of the train itself or was impacted by debris from the rail terminal is unclear to me at this time. There are reports that sections of the station roof have collapsed, as did a part of a shed that is used to store rolling stock. There is also a report of water conduits being severed in the station and other widespread structural damage in the platform area. It is unknown at this time why this train came in to Hoboken at what is being described as a high rate of speed. I do not know, nor am I aware if anybody else knows at this time exactly what that speed was, nor do we have any definitive reason as to why that speed was so high. We do not know at this time if there were any equipment failures on the train, nor do we know if there was human error on the part of the train crew or on the part of any signal operators who were responsible for controlling that section of the line. We do know, however, that the train was running in a configuration similar to what you see here. The consist featured four Comet 5 passenger cars, one of which was a cab car, that you can see here at the front of our train relative to our direction of travel. And at the rear, in a push configuration, was a single diesel locomotive, a GP40PH-2B, similar to the one that you see here. Across the entire New Jersey transit network, it is quite common for trains to operate in what is known as a push-pull configuration, meaning that depending on the direction of travel, a locomotive is either at the front or at the rear of a train relative to that direction of travel. What it does is it obviates the need to turn trains around physically or to have the locomotive run around from one end of the train to another, depending on the direction of travel, thus saving time and, of course, saving money on infrastructure because there's no need to have widespread turntables or sidings to allow locomotives to run around the train so that they can always be in a leading configuration. Leading configuration meaning that the locomotive is at the front relative to the direction of travel. I do not profess to be an expert in railroading to any degree, nor do I profess to be an expert in the operating procedures of New Jersey Transit. And the final disclaimer is I cannot claim that this recreation is accurate in every sense. This is the best that I have at my disposal using Train Simulator 2016. And on Train Simulator 2016, I do not actually have the capacity to recreate the Pascak Valley Line. However, I do have the North Jersey coastline, the northern end of which does share some landmarks and stops with the end of the Pascak Valley Line. Of course, the Bergen tunnels, which are critical, and the Hoboken Yard and the Hoboken Station, which are also critical. We're here at Newark Penn in Newark, New Jersey, heading northbound into Hoboken. And hopefully we will be able to give you some sort of sense of what that approach into Hoboken may look like. It may look substantially different coming off of the Pascak Valley Line. However, as I mentioned, this is the closest that I can get using the resources available to me. So we depart Newark Penn at this point. You can see that it is raining. Yesterday was a rather gloomy and blustery day. I do not know if it was raining at the time of the accident. However, I personally believe that weather was most likely not a factor because trains are resilient and crews are certainly well informed as to how they must handle adverse weather conditions, and trains run in weather much worse than a little bit of rain without any degree of difficulty to any substantial effect. Track conditions are of course monitored at all times by controllers in a central location, and signals are adjusted according to track conditions as well as to traffic on the line. What you can see at the bottom of the screen is a graphical representation of my control inputs. The large red lever toward the left center of the screen is the throttle. In the middle is my reverser, so that is determining the direction of travel relative to the cab car in the forward position. And right of center at the moment you can see the brake handle, that red lever that I'm actuating now. Those are brakes, those are the train brakes, so they operate brakes across the entire train. To the left of those controls is the speedometer, reading 54 miles per hour at this time. And then to the left of that you see our destination display, Hoboken Terminal Track 15. It is my understanding that this train was inbound to Hoboken on Track 5. So the final moment of that approach will look different. However, the majority of the approach through the Bergen tunnels will look quite similar as far as I understand. The configuration in which this train was running at the time of the accident in push mode. It is my understanding that when operating in push mode, the locomotive is unmanned. It's simply not necessary because all of the control operations of the train are being handled by the cab car, which is in a leading position. And of course the engineer has full control from that position. The control signals are relayed from the cab car through lines that run the length of the train into the locomotive in order to control throttle. These controls are operated through electrical conduits, and the brakes on trains are pneumatic. They are actuated by air pressure, and that air pressure is supplied by the locomotive. In addition to providing motive power, it also provides compressed air, which is then routed through air lines that also run the length of the train from the locomotive all the way up to the front, thus allowing actuation of the brakes. On the Pascak Valley Line, the approach into the Hoboken Terminal features Secaucus Junction, which is a junction with the Northeast Corridor and North Jersey coastlines, an interlock over where the Morris and Essex lines diverge, the Bergen tunnels, and then finally into Hoboken Yard. I do not know at this time if the train stopped at Secaucus Junction. However, for our purposes here, we are going to stop at what is the last platform available to me on this route in Train Simulator, Sanford's Track 2, which is coming up in just about 0.08 miles. It is not a platform per se. It appears to be some sort of commuter stop. I am not familiar with this section of the line. However, this is where we will stop, assuming that the train did stop at Secaucus Junction. The distances are not correct, I am aware. However, I would just like to give you a sense of perhaps how fast this train could have accelerated coming into the station. At this point, I don't want to speculate too much, because I don't want to give anybody a false idea of what could have occurred. However, assuming the worst case scenario, that all controls were lost, that's control over the brakes and control over the throttle, assuming that the brakes are fully released and the throttle was wide open, I estimate that the train could have reached a speed of over 60 miles per hour. And again, I'm not sure what exactly took place. I'm not sure what systems were operable at the time of the incident. However, the short run from Secaucus to the Hoboken Terminal may well have resulted in a speed of up to 60 miles per hour. So at this point, we are now beginning our run into Hoboken. You can see at very least at this point our speed limit is 75 miles per hour, which will go down to 30 miles per hour in just over 1/2 miles distance from here as we go over the Harrison Bridge and then begin our approach into the Bergen tunnels. At this point, approaching the bridge, the engineer would be applying the brakes in order to ensure that the train was at or below the 30 mile per hour speed limit, which has taken effect now. At this point, if the train were unable to slow down, the crew would have been aware of a problem. Passenger testimony and eyewitness testimony at this point seems to indicate that the train did not slow down. Whether this was due to a control fault or due to human error is unknown at this time. However, the stories from the passenger testimony that I have been privy to at this point seem to indicate that the train did not slow down. As you can see, our speed has already exceeded 64 miles per hour. And you can see that the ride would have started to become quite bumpy at this point, depending on what junctions were switched. And also, of course, depending on how loaded the train was and things of that nature. Through the Bergen tunnels now, the speed limit through the tunnels is also 30 miles per hour. Passengers reported that the approach was fast, again corroborating the idea that the train did not slow down. In about 1 mile's time, the yard limit for Hoboken comes into effect. That yard limit is 15 miles per hour. At this point, you can see that our speed has exceeded 73 miles per hour. And heading into the yard at Hoboken, this is much too fast to negotiate these switch junctions that we will have to negotiate. So I am going to take it upon myself to apply the brakes so we can negotiate some of these junctions, because I do want you to see what the approach into the platform looks like. But hopefully we've demonstrated just what kind of speed may have been possible I am not going to regard the speed limits. I am just going to operate in a manner that will allow us to negotiate the track. Again, the train yesterday approached on track 5. We are approaching on track 15, so this element of the approach most likely does not closely resemble what actually occurred. However, you can get a sense of what the approach may have looked like. And here into the station platform at Hoboken, you can see the buffers at the end of the line. And at a high rate of speed, this is where the train continued on past the buffers and into the back wall of the station, causing tremendous damage and leading to 1 fatality and, as of this time, 114 injuries. It is important to stress that all of this is speculation. If I personally had to hazard a guess, I would say that there was a failure on one of the brake lines on the train, the pneumatic lines that carry air pressure to and from the locomotive to actuate the brakes. I would say that one of those lines, or several of those lines, were either ruptured or otherwise pulled loose, thus cutting all braking power to the train. The NTSB at this point has not been able to come to any findings, at least none that they have released to the public. The engineer is said to be in good condition. He was hospitalized and I believe released, and he is cooperating with investigators. And hopefully sometime soon we will start to get some insight as to what caused the 2016 Hoboken rail crash. Again, I'm not an expert. I do not profess to be an expert. Train Simulator 2016 may not be the most accurate depiction of this section of the Pascak Valley Line for reasons I mentioned. And all in all, this is simply a tragic circumstance. It does appear to be an accident, and it's one that we certainly need to get to the bottom of, simply due to the sheer amount of people who travel on New Jersey Transit every day. And of course, we all rely on it being an efficient and safe mode of transport, which it has been for a very long time, and will continue to be, as far as I'm concerned. So thank you all very much for watching. These videos are not ones that I ever want to make. However, if I feel that I'm able to lend some insight into circumstances like this, I feel that it's something that perhaps I should do to start a dialogue in the community and to raise awareness of these kinds of things. Certainly, I extend my condolences to all involved in the accident and to the family of the woman who was killed. Thank you very much for watching.